And we are live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm one of your co-hosts, Blake Ruffino. Alongside me is my counterpart and co-host, Joe DeLeone. Good evening, good sir. How are you?
Great. Running around with my head cut off quite literally. I sprinted here to record the show. But other than that, I'm doing great, Blake.
I do know the feeling. It is spring, in the state of Louisiana. It's Mardi Gras. There's a lot going on in the deep south of Louisiana. But there's nothing more crazy than the Mary Kate story, or hashtag Daddygate. Joe, if you would have told me 5 years ago when Lane Kiffin was hired, and I told Joe that I was going to open up the show with something, but he wouldn't know what it would be about.
This is insane.
5 years ago that Ole Miss would have had a sex scandal on their hands and Lane Kiffin just being hired, I think all of us would have thought about Lane Kiffin. Nevertheless, the sex scandal does not come with Lane Kiffin. I'm sure that he was relieved to find out that Daddygate was not about him, if it's being all told. But what is going on in Oxford? That's the question.
Well, I think the better way to frame this, I don't think we should be surprised that this is happening in Oxford, that things like this.
Here's the thing. The dad, a Texas alum.
But are we really shocked that Texas is taking from Ole Miss? Are we really surprised?
I think that this was an SEC rivalry hit.
Exactly. It was an SEC battle that was happening here.
Boy,
that's what needs to be really – that's the real message here. That's the real missing story.
Well, there's nobody happier in America right now than Steve Smith Sr. because his sex allegation is over with now. And now you have a new sex allegation. This is what the offseason in football looks like. If this story would have came out during the season, it would be a non-story. But
no.
Here is the bad thing. What if this isn't real? That's the thing that I hate about these things.
Yeah.
There's not enough evidence in this one that this is actually true. It seems like a mad fraternity brother that got pissed off.
Well, that's the dumb part about the whole burnerverse world. And we all interact with the burnerverse mouth breathers from time to time. Some of them are really funny. Some of them are incredibly toxic. I will say this, that screen grab of those, the frat brothers completely ripping the kid. Those people suck. Those people aren't your friends. That's part of the reason why I'm not like totally all in on people that are all frat culture, because you're paying for a bunch of people to turn on your back, basically, is what it seems like.
I mean, let me just say this, though. The comments from the frat brothers are hilarious, by the way.
Sure.
It was arguably one of the funniest reads that I've had in quite some time. I got to admit. But I do think that when Daddygate and Ole Miss was trending, Lane Kiffin started getting a little worried. I mean, think about it. Do you think that Lane Kiffin gets on Twitter, which he always gets on Twitter, by the way? Do you think Lane Kiffin was like, oh, no, what is going on? Because it's not like they're,
I'm sure he was tracking it. I'm sure that he was paying attention to it. Hopefully he
knows who Mary Kate is.
I hope not. I would hope not.
Well,
he's got better things to pay attention to. He's got to figure out what they're doing this upcoming. They got to win ball games, Blake. That's the more important thing to focus on.
Yeah, and I'm sure on Sunday we're going to do our top 5 SEC head coaches. I've seen a lot of people putting Lane Kiffin above some others.
He hasn't earned it. I don't know if he's completely earned it yet.
I'm with you, Joe. I mean, think about this. I've seen people put him above like Steve Sarkisian, which I thought was wild. Brian Kelly.
Yeah, I mean, what is he? He hasn't won he hasn't competed for an SEC championship.
Well, hold on. Even at Notre Dame, Brian Kelly is 6-1 against Lane Kiffin.
Yeah.
So I mean, Steve Sarkisian just finished in the Final Four back-to-back years. I mean, like, what are we doing? But Daddygate is not the only thing that they got to fix out there in Oxford. But we do got a lot we got to talk to. Oklahoma trying to fix some things. Jim Nagy from the Senior Bowl getting hired as the GM. I know that you like Jim. We got to have a serious conversation about this role and about what it entails.
Right.
Brian Kelly meets with Tony Batiti, an SEC head coach, meeting with a Big Ten commissioner along with Greg Sankey. Joe, we might be about to get enforcement. Let me tell you this before we kind of get into that segment later on. Started making phone calls around LSU this morning in reference to this. Here's what I'd say. I think shit's about to really pop. I think that Brian Kelly was a part of this because. Let's get to it here, Joe. There is some news that I don't know if we're going to get to today, but Oregon, the state of Oregon, saying that they're going to try to pass a law where you do not have to disclose NIL. So
that's not going to go through.
Well, that's what I was about to say. It violates the federal House committee rules. Some of these states are getting a little bit ridiculous. Louisiana just passed where the players don't have to pay state income tax. But I do, by the way, just throwing that out there. So if there more come to it, we'll hit on that. But big news coming out of the SEC today. I can't believe I get to say that about Oklahoma, even though they've been in the conference for a year now. But Jim Nagy from the Senior Bowl, a guy that has been very well known in college and NFL circles, is going to Oklahoma to be the GM. Joe, I know that you know Jim. I know that you've been around the Senior Bowl. I'm going to let you kick this one off first. Your thoughts on him going to Oklahoma and being the GM for the Sooners?
Yeah, I think that this is a great hire for the main reason that he has been around the NFL and college game for as long as he has, and he's been around it at a high level. He's been running the Senior Bowl successfully. It's been the most premier scouting event out of any of the scouting events. There have been ebbs and flows in the success of other events for the lead up to the NFL draft. It has become, and it has been always the precursor for setting up a lot of guys going on to be risers throughout the process, a lot of guys that would go on to be top 10 picks. It creates an opportunity for the media and for team personnel to interact and to be all in one setting in one area in Mobile, Alabama. Nagy's background, I think, is exactly what these college programs need in order to modernize their roster structure, their team building approach. The only thing that I'm slightly
here it is. We're going to agree on this.
Cautious on this. He doesn't. You're hiring somebody with the intention. Your general manager should be in the intention of knowing how to handle contract negotiations. You need somebody to have that. And he's never negotiated a contract, to my knowledge. He has just recruited guys to come play in the event based on the input that he receives from the NFL, from what teams want to see, which guys they want to participate. I don't think that this role that he's taking should require some sort of a background of salaries and roster management and cap management. I just have no idea if he's going to know how to handle that.
Dude, I got to be real with you. I thought we were going to come in here and argue this exact point. Spot on, dude.
He doesn't have it. He doesn't have the experience.
Well, here's the thing. You hit the nail on the head. I'm so glad that we actually agree on this because I'm tired of fighting. But look, there's different things that you can do, right? Meaning, number one, I think it's smart in this direction. Oklahoma has to pivot. What do I mean? They have to pivot in the sense of that they got to out-scout teams. They're not going to be in this situation where they're going to go in the SEC and start plucking people from other programs. They're not going to do it. I'm sorry. It's not going to happen. I know that the fan base of Oklahoma thought when they had that SEC patch on that they would walk in here and start taking players from other programs. Joe, they're not going to take them from Texas. Sorry, they're not. They're not going to take them from LSU. They're not going to take them from A&M. They're not going to take them from Georgia unless they're spending outrageous amounts of money. They may want to do that. I don't know. What can they do that doesn't cost them the money that way? They can out-scout them. Is there a 3-star kid that nobody knows about that they can get in here, develop, and he can make an impact? Those are the things where you can start really hitting. However, I'm with you. There's a massive difference right now when it comes to recruiting, and especially when it comes to recruiting in reference to high school. The portal for him, I think, will be a little bit different because he'll have the agents, he has the contacts, he understands the game. He'll have to learn the NIL from a portal aspect. I'm with you. And here's another thing. I've seen everybody talk about today, well, he recruited for the Senior Bowl.
It's not really recruiting. You get an invite, you're going to the Senior Bowl. It's not. But he's not going to be doing any recruiting as the general manager. It's roster management.
No. That's not true. Let me tell you what these general managers have to do. Coaches recruit, then everything goes to the general manager. When you get in these top 2 situations, these negotiations go to the general manager. It's not the coach that's dealing with this. You're having to out-recruit and incentives, to your point about contracts, to get them to go there. Joe, this is just as much as recruiting. Ask any GM in the SEC right now. They will tell you that they're more over-recruiting because of the money aspect of it than any coach. What does the coach do? The coach gets them involved and want them to play at the school. Joe, as soon as it goes to money, they're not going to the head coach anymore. They're not going to the coaches, the position coaches. They go to the GM's office. That's where they're going to negotiate these contracts. You hit the nail on the head perfectly when you talk about this. He's going to have to recruit. He's going to have to wheel and deal and get in there. So
that feels like, I don't mean to cut you off, but that feels a little less about recruiting and a little bit more about contract negotiations with NIL agents, which is still the concern that we're having here. It's less of trying to incentivize a kid to come and more of like, hey, I got to work through these details with an agent.
But it's still, I will put it as recruiting with this. It's like NFL free agency, right? Let's call it what it is.
Mm-hmm.
State income tax becomes a big thing. Joe, the money's the money. Most of these teams are matching one another, right? Like most of these teams will match each other. I mean, there will be specific details and players that you're not going to match for, okay? When you come to the four-star kid, when both things are matching, it does become a recruiting battle when it comes to incentives. How do you put this? How do you put that? Here's what he's got to do for this to succeed. He's got to out-scout everybody. Now, for me, though, when it comes to this upcoming season means nothing for him. This isn't.
Oh, yeah, no.
But here's my thing, though, with this. It's a big-name, flashy hire, right? I mean, it's a man. Everybody's like, oh, shit, look at Oklahoma. What's going to happen if they go 6-6 or 7-5 again? What if the O-line isn't fixed? Then what? I really hope that this was not a Brent Venables hire. I hope this was an Oklahoma AD hire. Because
that's a good point. That's a good point.
Well, because listen, what are you going to do if he goes 6-6, 7-5 again, Joe? Are you going to move on from him?
Well, I would hope that Jim Nagy has the foresight to negotiate and say, like, hey, if Venables gets fired, am I going with him? I think that to angle that, these general manager roles are actually technically a part of the athletic administration. They're part of the athletic department. So right. I would think that there would be a little safety there. Where his impact is going to be felt first, I think, is going to be through the first transfer portal class. I'm really curious on, because like the talent acquisition part and the knowing of like who is worth going after in the portal and seeing what good players look like, that's where Nagy's going to shine. Like that's where he's going to do the best. He's going to be able to have the eye to identify like, hey, this is a guy that, let's call it what it is. When you're in the portal, you're looking for guys that are good enough to compete and play in the NFL. You're looking for sophomores and juniors that could eventually go on to get drafted. So he has the eye to identify that stuff.
Well, let me ask you a question because you're more in the NFL Senior Bowl world. I think it's a little bit different because he doesn't have the ability now to call a head coach from another program and say, hey, who's your top player?
Well, the inverse of what the real reality, and there's a little bit of speculation in this, but like from what I've heard from people, the process is mostly based off of like, hey, the NFL, you talk to the NFL, you talk to NFL scouts, you talk to NFL general managers, and you get a really strong, they build their own board, they do their own scouting, but your decision is based on tailoring towards the NFL getting to see the guys that they want to see in a competitive environment against the best. That is the whole purpose of it. They're not going to go rogue and just invite a bunch of random dudes just because they think that they're the best players. They want the NFL to want to be there, and that's how that relationship has always been built and why it's flourished and why it's been so successful and why the best players have consistently gone there. So to that point, some of the evaluation and roster building for the Senior Bowl has already been done for him. And that's a negative that I kind of hear, if I to put it lightly.
I'll be honest with you. Look, I've seen Jim at LSU practices for what it's worth. He does good out there by himself in scouts. I'll give him that. I've literally seen it with my own eyes. Literally.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not saying he doesn't, because I can attest that he actually does it. The statement you just made is 1,000% correct, though. It's not an opinion. It is what's happening here. So, listen, I think it's a massive, big name hire. It can't be connected to Venables. There's a lot that he's got to prove here.
Yeah.
Joe, Oklahoma, for what it's worth, if he's able to be successful, this is they need this one to hit, because you're going to have to recruit in a different way than everybody else. I'm sorry, you're going to have to. And I think that's the world that you got to live in right now. He's going to have to out-scout. Now, in reference to Jim, I'll give him this, okay? He was in the NFL for 18 years in the scouting department. It's not like he doesn't have experience. But to your point, though, that you stated earlier, the GM role is much, much more and much, much different than what you think of a GM. And a GM, it's only free agencies that you're recruiting for. This is a high school thing too. Joe, their high school big board right now is going to have 150 players on it at minimum. Like at minimum.
Yeah.
95% of those kids will not go to Oklahoma. 95%. He's never gone through that before. It is a different beast. Listen, I'm not saying I don't like the hire, because I just, outside of being a big name, will this work? It will be my ultimate question.
Yeah, there are definitely questions that you're bringing up that need to be proven. Like, how does his role and how does his impact show up with high school recruiting? And they've recruited really well at the high school level. They have had good high school recruiting classes, but the way that you succeed is by having and finding the low 4-star, 3-star kids, and those kids panning out and developing and turning into impactful starters. Having a really good general manager for identifying talent, I think, is important. But I would love to know and to see, how does he step into this relationship of handling recruits and also handling negotiations with transfer portal players and with recruits? Because you can identify players all you want. You can find a lot of great players, but if you're not getting them and they're not coming to play, it's meaningless. Well, so that's what needs to be answered.
There is a massive thing that we've left out here the entire time. His number one goal right now for every GM in the country is roster retention. Let me tell you the coaches let me tell you the coaches that I hear talk about roster retention every year. Kirby Smart, Steve Sarkisian literally will not have a spring game because of roster retention.
Yeah.
Matt Rule, Brian Kelly, Ryan Day, Steve Sarkisian. Let me just throw this at you. They all are saying that none of them are having the negotiations with the player. So again, he's going to okay, I'm not trying to, I know it probably comes off, my aura comes off, pause, but it comes off that I think that this is a bad aura.
No, I don't think that you're framing it that way. I'm sure Oklahoma fans will think that you are, but
well, Oklahoma fans, let me just say this. I got obliterated by your fan base last offseason when I said you're going 6-6. Joe, I got a question. I got a question for you. What did they go?
6-6. Oh, 6-7. 6-7. Sorry.
Okay. It's a different beast, buddy. When you get in the SEC and the Big Ten, it's a different beast. I'll give this example. Let's take the SEC out of it. How's USC's recruiting? They're in the Big Ten. Why did more Big Ten teams get California kids than ever before? It literally was a record. They don't want you having them. Even if they don't think the kid will pan out, they don't want you to have it. Yeah. So again, good googly moog. I guess Dan Lanning took like 2/3 of them, though. We got to
remember that most of those kids.
We talk more about recruiting and high school recruiting in the last 3 weeks than we've done in the last 3 years.
I'm fine with it. It's important.
That's very true. All right, let's move on to the next thing here. Joe, there was a big article that Ross Dellinger at Yahoo Sports wrote. I'm going to keep the BK thing out of it other than what he said went on in the meeting. But there was a meeting between the SEC and the Big Ten in reference to the new expanded playoff and how things would look with a new enforcement third-party rule when it comes to college, not just college football, college athletics. Joe, I wanted to tear up. Now, I told you in the beginning of the show that I made some calls around LSU today about, can you clarify some things for me? This is how I understand it. Again, I understand what the article says. This is how I understand it from what I have been told. They're going to formulate, the NCAA along with the SEC and Big Ten are going to formulate a third-party enforcement. In that enforcement, coaches can be fined and suspended. Players can be fined and suspended. Tampering, targeting, all these different things is on the table for a new, what we would call a revised, can't say this word, but what we would realize it as a collective bargaining agreement. Here's the kicker. The Big Ten and the SEC put their foot down. If you want us to be a part of the college football playoff, everybody that wants to participate for a national title has got to sign this and live up to it. Joe, I feel for the first time since 2020 that we might have some direction here, that the sport might start having some even playing field. Now, I'll say this. You can't have a business and you can't have a sport without enforcement. I understand that the court system, you could say, well, they can sue, it doesn't matter. But the way that I understand this is, if you sign this contract, you're agreeing to follow these rules. So then the court would say, hey, you agreed to this and you broke those said rules. Joe, I got to be honest. When reading this article from Ross, I kind of feel like a massive sigh of relief. I don't know why this isn't being talked about more, if I'm being honest.
Well, I'm going to piss you off here with this.
Oh, shit. We were doing so good.
Well, this is a little bit of I told you so. Whenever we would yell at each other of like, how does this get fixed? And I kept saying, we need an enforcement entity. And then you would argue with me and say that there's no enforcement entity coming. And then here's the enforcement entity coming. I'm just being a little bit of a dick. I'm just pointing that out. This is, though, exactly what we both needed and we wanted to see from the sport in order to fix it. I was previously, I've mentioned this a million times, my last job, I was Ross's producer for the College Football Inquirer. And he talked about this a lot, that with the House settlement, once it's like totally finalized, which I think is like almost done.
7th.
Yes. That the clearinghouse was a part of it. And the NIL clearinghouse, which is going to be the enforcement entity that is put together by Deloitte.
Which they're a scumbag institution. Continue.
I'll tell you why I'm laughing that after this. Okay. The clearinghouse, though, it didn't seem very clear what their role was going to be. It kind of just felt like they were going to try and make sure that everything was kosher, that everything was clean, that like there was no dirtiness happening, which is an important part of this. It's something that I constantly brought up of like, hey, we need somebody to make sure, a third party that has nothing to do with this, which is why it's actually a good thing it's going through a consulting firm, because all they care about is making money off of this. And the way that they make money off this is if the damn thing works. So we needed somebody to check and make sure everything works. But I'm really glad that like the main focus is that the driving force, and Brian Kelly being a driving force in this, and you mentioned Ryan Day possibly being a driving force in this, is killing off tampering. Like, if you are found for tampering, that there should be serious fines that are associated with it. Like, I almost don't give a shit about the like suspensions and stuff, because, you know, what are you going to do? You're going to suspend a head coach for a couple of games because one of his staffers reached out to a kid when he wasn't supposed to. I want to see $1 million worth of fines if you're caught doing this, because that will really stop these programs from dicking around and doing this stuff. Like, it needs to be like a real killer if you get caught.
This was a conversation in the meeting. It's not in the article. I will put every sourcing thing that I have in this. Here was the thing that I know that was said in the meeting that they thought might not work. Joe, if you're a player, why would you agree to this?
With you're right. That is part of this, of like, it does theoretically potentially limit what you can make, and this is where we need the collective bargaining agreement eventually. And correct. I think that part of, if you sign into the settlement, most of these guys aren't reading the settlement docs. I think that you're kind of agreeing to get paid your settlement and your rev share in order to give up those rights to the clearinghouse. So that's,
they would essentially, from what I understand, the conferences in the Big Ten and the SEC are saying that they would make the kids sign that. However, you get a smart enough kid that reads that document and goes to social media, it's over. Joe, I'm being real with you. If I'm a player, seriously, I want the enforcement. I am behind it. Okay? I am 100% behind it. Don't get me twisted. If I'm a player, I ain't signing that shit. Why would I? Because if I'm a tight end and I caught 70 passes for 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns and I'm being tampered with and my money value goes up, then what?
Well, then do it legally. It's just like if you're an incoming free agent and you have a great year in the NFL in your contract year, you go through the right means to acquiring a better deal. You tell your current team, you go to them and say like, hey, my agent thinks I can get this amount of money. I'm going to leave if you don't think you can match it. And then you leave. I think that the tampering part in this equation that you're talking about, I don't think that like it impacts players that much because all this is going to do is just prevent these kids.
Coaches aren't talking to players. They're not talking to players. They're talking to the agents.
They are, but they're also, I mean, some of them are directly DMing these small school players and just saying like, hey, you should hop in the portal. I know that happens. I know FCS guys that just get DMs from SEC coaches. Tucker Kraft was one of them. Tucker Kraft, who South Dakota State tight end, he told me and Ryan Roberts when he was coming out that this was on one of our episodes of our show that we did for back when it was the first team. He literally told us, Bama reached out to me. Like they reached out to me because they wanted me, like somebody on the staff, the scouting staff or whatever, just hit me up. Like that stuff happens. Those reach outs are happening.
I mean, you're right. But again, it doesn't stop that I would not sign it, right? Like, I mean, there's going to be a players association. And listen,
I think eventually.
Fine me for what? Like, so there was a conversation in that meeting, by the way, that happened all weekend in New Orleans. The conversation was, and I'm not going to say who was in there and said it. It was not a coach. I'll throw that out there. A player getting fined for targeting for what? Because of a judgment call? Like there's an agreement in the NFL that you're giving up. A player's not giving the agreement on a targeting rule.
Wait. Why are you talking about? Where did targeting come into this?
I'm making up the targeting rule because players will be fined. I do think that there will be some on-field stuff that they will go after. I really do believe that's going to happen.
I don't. I mean, this whole situation is all NIL related and revenue sharing related. No. I don't think these players are going to get fined for on-field actions. I really don't. Suspensions.
Well, that's an on-field action.
But the clearinghouse, though, the emphasis of the clearinghouse is there's nothing about on-field stuff. So I don't want to speculate that.
But here's the thing, then, Ross's thing that I don't understand. The clearinghouse, bullshit on the clearinghouse. The clearinghouse is to make sure that the documents are correct. It has nothing to do with the enforcement of what comes down in the penalty of it. The article does not make sense on the clearinghouse part of it. The clearinghouse has nothing to do with who would be coming down on the enforcement side. Does that make sense?
No, I mean, this is literally saying that the enforcement entity would be the one who's...
They're going to a third-party entity not named the NCAA clearinghouse. Read the first paragraph, then read like the fifth paragraph. That part I don't understand.
Okay, the first paragraph, there will be real enforcement. The head coach, LSU head coach, right. Sports. It will be across the board, consistent enforcement with severe sanctions. They will be quick. They'll be swift. I think everybody is on board. The new Power Conference-led enforcement entity in LSC with a yet-to-be-named CEO is poised to implement significant penalties for those violating a variety of revenue-sharing related rules, including restriction in the number of transfers a program can add, millions in financial fines, a reduction in a team's future rev share pool, and multi-game suspensions for coaches. So this is saying that they will be...
first sentence, it says a new third-party entity, does it not?
The new third-party entity is going to be the one
the clearinghouse is already enacted. The clearinghouse is already there. Me and you went through the clearinghouse.
No, but that's a different clearinghouse. That's an NCAA eligibility clearinghouse. That's not an NIL clearinghouse. They're just two different things.
Am I being wrong here in saying that?
You're mixing the two of them up.
In that article, does it not say that outside the NCAA in the first paragraph, the first ever little thing.
It says outside of the NCAA, so this is separate. This is a new thing.
Exactly. So that's what I'm trying to say. This is not an NCAA thing. My part. So to get back to the point, this is not a third party outside of the NCAA. So you're making judgment calls from a third party entity. Can I describe it like this? I'm sorry we're spending so much time on this. The UFC, their drug policy, they have a different drug policy than USADA, who they used to use. USADA did other things outside of the UFC. What I'm saying is when you get to these third parties, look at the UFC.
Well, this is part of like the other angle that I wanted to bring up with this. What the hell does the NCAA now do? Seriously, like what do they control if this comes into play?
Academics, clearinghouse on NIL is what it sounds like. But again,
no. But they don't. All NIL is going to go through the clearinghouse.
I get that, but academics, they still can do academics. They're still suspending kids for academics.
Okay, so it sounds like it's just academic enforcement. That sounds like that's all they're going to be eventually in the future. That's the craziest part about all of this is that the NCAA is giving up a lot of power theoretically.
Well, do they have a choice?
No.
Here's what I would do. I would combine all three of them. I would call it the NCAA. I would have an enforcement wing. I would have an eligibility wing, and I'd have an NIL wing. Hey, guess what? Newsflash. ... It's how our countries run.
Well, but I think that we're too far. We're almost a little too far gone that this is being created. I mean, you could just say that it's associated.
No, I don't think it's too far gone if everybody agrees.
I think
what's the NCAA going to not disagree with? They don't have the enforcement anyway.
Well, that part I don't take issue with because you're right. I mean, like Charlie Baker and the NCAA don't really have say in this, and they need to say yes to this in order for the sport to get fixed and for college athletics to get fixed. But I'm just like bringing it up.
He literally went, by the way, I know this is too political. Did you see him on Capitol Hill?
Yes. I guess that's what his purpose is to answer those questions.
Well, listen, I got to stick up for him. I mean, they were saying, and listen, I do not agree with men playing in women's sports. Want to make this very well known. That's not what I'm agreeing with him on. The federal government came out and said that you had to do it, and they ridiculed him for it. And I'm like, he has no enforcement because of you. Like, you're mad at him? Mad at him for what? You literally came down on him. Listen, to get back to the main thing being the main thing, you got to have some enforcement. But again, if I'm a player, Joe, I'm just not agreeing to it. I'm sorry. I'm not telling Ben Ruffino to agree to it. Look, we're going to average 75 catches a season, 1,200 yards, and 10 touchdowns. And then you're going to do a draft, and you're going to leave him out of your top 25 like you did Will Campbell, and me and you are going to fight.
I think these players are going to have no issue.
You're not going to acknowledge it? You're not going to acknowledge what I just said?
No, because it's not it's not wrong to have Will Campbell outside my top 25. He's the 26th. He's not
making out of the top 10.
That I'm not disagreeing with. It's my own personal opinion. It's not a projection.
By the way, they were hating me because of your analysis.
That's on them. There's better athletes. There's better athletes at tackle. God forbid, and he's got short arms. God forbid, I want to go with the guys that have the more prototypical size.
I'll say this: Kelvin Banks gave up more sacks in the first game versus Georgia than Will Campbell did in a career.
That's fine. I mean, I don't disagree with that. I think he's going to be a great guard, a very high floor guard, and he's going to be a consistent quality starter.
He ain't playing guard.
Well, he should be playing guard.
He ain't.
There's two guys in the NFL that are currently succeeding with his arm length, and they are outliers.
Jared Verse had 270-plus snaps against him and didn't have a sack. He was the NFL Rookie of the Year.
That's fine, but he's going to be going up against much.
Kelvin Banks gave up 3 sacks. Production's got to be production. Did you really think that I was going to let you go this whole show?
No. But there's plenty of times that guys in college have.
Mary Kate saved your ass to start talking.
Whatever. Let's move on to the next topic. I know we got to get out. We got to get out of here. And
I still got some time here. I still got some time. All right. Joe, we continue on these first-year expectations, but the man is back in Orlando. That being Scott Frost at UCF. Gus Malzahn moves on as the OC to Florida State. Scott Frost is back. Why do I don't know how to feel about this one, Joe. Your thoughts, Scott Frost back in Orlando.
You're right. I have no idea how to feel about this because the last time that
he won a national title.
Sure. He had unbelievable success at UCF before NIL, back when they were a G5 program. The minute that they moved up to the G5 level, the Power 4 level, and they moved to the Big 12, was when they started to struggle. And they started to have inconsistencies. I just don't know what Scott Frost is like as a recruiter at the P4 level. We saw the way that he performed at Nebraska. He didn't bring in enough quality kids for that roster to improve. It was falling apart by the time that Matt Rule took over it. I think that this is a little bit of wishful thinking to assume that Scott Frost is just going to pick this thing back up right where he had it a couple of years ago. This is a multi-year rebuild process because of the way that this roster and this team was left, that their Malzahn left. I don't know. And it sounds like you're in agreement with me. It feels like it would be really naive to assume that this would just immediately work and they would go back to being as successful as they used to be.
I listen, here's the thing about Scott Frost that I think about, okay? I think he's getting blamed for everything that happened in Nebraska, and he does deserve a lot of blame. 0-17 in one-score games. It's not all on him. A lot of it is. It's not all on him. It's not like they were they were bad, but they weren't. Does that make sense? They were competitive in so many different games. The problem that he had in Nebraska is not his and his alone. Hasn't gone good without him. It's been about the same, if we're just calling it like it is. I saw a guy take off a year. You didn't hear from him. You didn't hear a word. All of a sudden, he wants to get back in football. He goes to UCF. I am rooting for this to work. I
don't disagree with that.
I saw a guy that got blamed for everything that was going on and didn't know how to fix it. And he wanted to succeed, and he wanted Nebraska to succeed. Joe, I think Nebraska is a whole different beast, okay? I think the caliber of athlete that he can recruit in Florida is a completely different ordeal, and I still think that he can have success as a head coach. I don't know how long it's going to take him to do that, but I think he can have it. I think I'm more intrigued about UCF than any of these coaching hires because, Joe, here's the truth. He can build and win that conference. There's no outlier Texas or Oklahoma in that conference anymore. There just isn't. Joe, if we're talking about him going toe-to-toe with Kansas State every year, he can out-recruit and develop Kansas State. He 1,000%.
Yeah, I mean, it's an easy selling point. Hey, do you want to go to school right near Disney World? I mean, their campus is in a nice area. When I was in college, I visited it a couple times.
Well, and they're spending money, bro. I mean, it's not like investment's not there for Orlando. By the way, in Orlando at UCF, the top 250 boosters were at his second introductory press conference. They wanted him back. They needed him back. Take year one for what it is. Unless he goes 2-10 like Florida State, then we'll have the discussion. But I don't know how to feel about it year one. But this isn't a year one hire. This is a rebuild to get back where we were type of build.
Well, I mean, if we're to specifically talk about the way that he rebuilt this the first time, if I'm remembering correctly, he took over an awful UCF program.
Oh.
The team, the first year he was there, they went 6-7, and then they went 13-0, and then he was hired away. I believe that 2015 was the year that they went 0-12, if I'm remembering correctly. I'm just quickly pulling it up. Yes, they went 0-12. So he took an 0-12 team, and in 2 years, turned them into an undefeated 13-0 football program.
Yeah, they're not that bad. They're not.
They're not. So we have the context of knowing hey, this is a roster builder. This is a guy who knows how to recruit the area and build a roster.
He did, though, do it pre-portal and pre-NIL, though. Just
right.
to
So
be fair.
that's what I'm getting at. He did it at a lower level, and he did it without NIL. So now in the state of Florida, where you're going to get most of your guys, it's an attraction to get most of the guys in the state to stay near home, relatively near home. But it's now a lot harder with other teams outside of the state of Florida to be able to reach into your state and get guys and incentivize them to come play. And you needed a Big 12 program like this. You need to be able to swing and hit on 4-star guys and high 3-star guys that other massive programs are going to the state of Florida to get depth pieces and rotational players. So like that is an uphill battle. I also think like we got to mention too, it's a huge uphill battle that they're losing their 3 best players, 2 DBs, BJ Adams and Mac McWilliams, and RJ Harvey, who was an elite running back in the Big 12 this past year.
Not KJ Jefferson? KJ
Jefferson was fine. He was okay. I mean, actually, he was kind of a mess last year. I just like this first year is going to be rough. So like the whole point of this video when we do these segments is like first year expectations, they're probably going to be 4-8. They're probably going to be 5-7. They're probably going to have a lot of struggles on the field because it is an uphill battle for turning things around when it kind of looked like Malzahn was mailing it in towards the end.
Let me look this up because I saw this earlier. Let me just pull it up. Hold on one second. Transfer portal. To give him some credit, okay, they didn't do bad in the portal, though. Like, as an example, he went and got Sincere Edwards out of Pitt. Yeah. He went and got Dwayne Thomas. I mean, they brought in some dudes now.
Decent players.
Well, I mean, he got Marcus Burke, the wide receiver from Florida. That's not a bad pull. That ain't a bad pull at all. The Lewis Carter kid from Oklahoma. I mean, Lewis Carter, hello, Bama film. Right. Okay. Here's what I'll say. Based off the portal stuff and just seeing some of the players that we've seen, I would be shocked if they're not 500. I'll say it like that in year one.
They're good enough to be 500.
Yeah, he can be there. I think they'll be fine. All right.
They could be like Kenny Dillingham and in 2 years be competing for the Big 12. Totally
if he gets a quarterback situation right. But by the way, let's call it what it is. He was the spawn that produced Josh Heupel too. He brought in Heupel to call offense. What does he do? Do we have something like that again? But he did have, what was the Milton kid? He had him for like 27
Mackenzie Milton. I want to say Mackenzie Milton. I think he is.
I think he might be on his staff, right?
Quarterback's coach.
Yeah.
He's my age.
Hey, one more year of eligibility. Just throw Mackenzie Milton out
27. You want to throw a 27-year-old out there?
You're only 20.
I'm actually 26. I'm not 27.
Golly. Dude, I was like in second grade when you were born. It's not that bad, I don't guess.
No, that's not that far off.
All right, let's end it with this. Steve Spurrier has been hired back at Florida.
The other Steve Spurrier.
The junior. The assistant to the head coach, Steve Spurrier Jr., is going to be the assistant, as I just mentioned, to the head coach. Boy, Billy just keeps finding ways to come up with wild ways to name these coaches. I don't mind this one, though. Offensive-minded guy, been around a lot of football. What is the assistant to the head coach? Let me tell you, let's talk about what he really is going to be doing. He's going to be Billy's eyes. Steve, what are you saying? Safety rolling here. You could probably do this, and this. Sounds good. Billy goes amongst himself. I don't mind this at all, Joe. I actually kind of like it, if I'm being honest, for this sense. If you're these analyst roles that keep coming up, these on-field roles, listen, Joe, if you go out to any practice across the country, these analysts are taking over position coaches stuff. They're being specific with one or two players. I don't mind this at all. I really don't. I really, really, really don't. Steve Spurrier Jr. has been around more football than me and you and everybody that will listen to the show combined. I just don't hate it. But I think the reason it's getting so much traction, and even while we're talking about it, is because it's Steve Spurrier Jr.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't mind this. If he were Steve Martin, well, let me not say Steve Martin. If it were Steve, well, let me not say Steve Smith.
Steve Johnson. No, Stevie Johnson. That doesn't work either.
Well,
a lot of Steves.
If his name was Steve DeLeone and it had the track record of the same exact thing, we probably would say this is a solid hire. But because it's Steve Spurrier Jr., we make a big deal out of it.
But like, what is his track record? I mean, he's bounced around and he's followed his dad to a bunch of places, and he's never been a sole play caller. He's never been like a well-renowned assistant positional coach. It's kind of a nothing burger for me. Like, this is just makes me feel, yeah, cool. You hired the kid whose dad was one of our greatest coaches and players of all time.
Joe,
it feels like a nostalgia pull just to make everybody feel good about themselves.
I could see that, but that's my point, right? But it doesn't mean he doesn't know ball. It doesn't mean he can't be his eyes and ears.
Well, but like, this is kind of what I'm getting at is like, we don't know what his role is like for certain going to be. He's a 53-year-old guy who's been in coaching for a really long time, who was last in OC with Tulsa this past year. Like, what? This doesn't take him over the top. I think it's just like a little feel good.
But let me tell you what he could do. Billy's got a lot on his plate, and Russ Callaway is going to be in the box. He can be there with DJ looking over iPad film, stuff like that. I mean, listen, so here's what I'd say. I agree with what you're saying. Who do you trust the most to be with your quarterback when the defense is on the field? Because Billy can't do it.
No, the concept of hiring somebody to have an extra role in the offense, like, I'm fine with that. But where I'm like having pause is like, is he really that brilliant of a football mind that his impact is going to go unnoticed, that he's going to just be this really, really pivotal player or within the success of this team this upcoming year?
No, but he can do something that everybody else in the country can't do.
What, call his dad?
I know it sounds insignificant, but let me just tell you something. As I've gotten older, when I need professional help, my situation may be a little bit different, but I have a brother that's 10 years older than me. And I will tell you, as I've had kids, and as I've grown a business, and as I've done X, Y, and Z, you do lean on your older brother or family a lot more. What do you see? What do you see that we can look at and work on? I actually don't mind it, dude. I really don't. I just, because it's so insignificant that he's somebody that can really help you. And I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy.
I don't think you're crazy. This one doesn't tickle me as much. When we were talking about it, texting about it earlier.
Did you just say it doesn't tickle you?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't get me riled up. It doesn't get me going. I mean, look, I get your angle. Like, I get what you're saying. But like, he's going to be holding
any other word other than
no. I refuse. I just find it hard to believe like what his impact is like really going to be.
I can see that.
To reiterate what I'm saying here, it really truly just feels like hire a name that everybody recognizes, and we're going to feel really good about ourselves because we did it.
You mean Jim Nagy?
I mean, that's not a bad way of framing it.
I know something that will get you riled up.
What?
Mary Kate Cornett on TikTok. Baby, I'm so glad we're getting through this together. Nothing is going to stop us from being together. I promise to be better. I promise I will be better. I love you. With the song Again by Fetty Wap.
Your investment into this is troubling for me.
You're admitting it. You're admitting that I will be better. Hold on. Playing a song on TikTok by Fetty Wap, who has a song out there called Wet.
Okay, now you're going very conspiratorial. We need spring ball to kick off, please, for the love of God. So we don't need to do this shit anymore. I need some pads to hit, man. I need some damn pads to hit. That's all I care about right now.
Well, Mary Kate loves getting pads hit, but that's I mean, listen, she's doing it to herself, Joe. I don't know how much of this.
Oh my God. I don't even know what to say.
She's doing this to herself. All right. I just can't. This does, speaking of being tickled, this does tickle me. All right.
I can tell.
I mean, it's just so provocative. It gets the people going. By the way, before we get out of here, tell everybody what you and Ryan are doing, because you're all going to be at the Combine. Let them know.
Yes, we'll be at the NFL Combine. We're going to be doing 1 million guest appearances and also breaking down the top performers of the NFL Combine, A to Z Sports Film Room channel on YouTube, so you don't miss any of that. I'm excited. It's the best time of year. Going to get myself a nice big steak at St. Elmo's. Probably going to sleep a total of 10 hours over the next 3 days. But this is why we do it. We do it for the love of the game.
Very true. All right. We'll see y'all soon. Y'all have a good one. Peace.